Erica Scholtes got home from work, hoping to see her 2-year-old daughter waiting by the door with arms outstretched. But little Parker was nowhere to be found. She could be asleep, she thought, and went in to ask her husband about their daughter's whereabouts. The grim expression on his face showed that something was terribly wrong. This is the heartbreaking case of Parker Scholtes. At around 1 p.m. on Tuesday, July 9, 2024, Christopher Scholtes returned to his home in Marana, a suburb of Tucson, Arizona, after spending the morning running errands with his 3 children. He prepared a meal for his 9-year-old and 5-year-old daughters, plugged in his video games, and shut out the world. A few hours later, his wife, Erica Scholtes, returned from work. She found her little girls playing in the living room, and there would have been no reason for concern. But they were 2 instead of 3. She immediately assumed that the third, a 2-year-old girl named Parker, was taking a nap, and proceeded to check on her, but found her nowhere in the house. The 35-year-old mother then went to ask her husband, who was deeply engrossed in his video games, for their child, since they both went shopping earlier in the day. To her dismay, he had no answers, or he pretended not to because his face had already gone white in fear. The Scholtes searched the house once more, and after a fruitless search, the father suggested checking the car. Unfortunately, they found the little girl in the back seat, unconscious. They immediately called 911, and the mother rushed in to perform CPR on the child until first responders arrived. The child was then taken to a hospital via ambulance, where the paramedics kept trying to revive her. On arrival at the hospital, little Parker was pronounced dead. She died after being in a sweltering car for several hours. So what exactly happened? According to what Chris told investigators, he arrived home at around 2:30 p.m. on that fateful day and noticed that Parker had fallen asleep in the car. Not wanting to wake her, he parked the car and left it running so she could sleep in the air conditioning. He then went inside with his other 2 children, planning to check on her periodically. In his initial statements, he did check on her and saw that she was fine, so her death was just an unfortunate incident. But he later retracted the claims, saying that he had left the car running so that the air conditioning would keep her from overheating. However, surveillance footage obtained from a neighboring home completely debunked his claims. First, he arrived around 12:53 p.m., almost an hour before the time he mentioned in his initial statements. He had told the lie to cover up the fact that she had been in the car for more than 3 hours. He indeed left his car running, but he knew that his 2023 Acura MDX would automatically go off after 30 minutes of running, and he made no effort to check on his child. According to his older daughters, he had gotten distracted by his food and the video games, and he would regularly forget them in the car. The police also discovered texts between him and his wife, where she scolded him for leaving the children in the car. "I told you to stop leaving them in the car," confirming that it wasn't the first time. And he had responded with, "Babe, I'm sorry. Babe, our family. How could I do this? I killed our baby. This can't be real." The hurt in Christopher's text showed that he and Parker shared a deep bond, and several pieces of evidence point to that. For a little girl who spent 2 short years on Earth, Parker was a bright light that burnt immensely. Parker was born at the end of October 2021 to a loving family of 4, which included her mother, an anesthesiologist, her father, a stay-at-home dad, and her 2 older sisters. Judging from the adorable photos posted online, the Scholtes were living a very good life. Just a few weeks after her birth, they went on a trip to Disneyland, and that's just one of the numerous trips the family has gone on since her birth. The year of her death, 2024, the family went skiing in Banff in February and took a beach holiday to Cancun in March. They clearly lacked nothing. Parker was also particularly close to her dad because they were almost always together. Christopher's social media is filled with images of his family, especially that of his youngest daughter. In one post, where he was asleep while snuggling with the little girl, he captioned it, "I call this one a father's comfort." In another photo, where he showed Parker's crayon drawing, he wrote, "Struggling artist." And in another where she was dressed up, his description was, "Raising a menace to society, hat tilted like her attitude, and her vicious pit bull ready to attack." He also uploaded videos of them doing things together, like packing up wooden toy blocks into a box and dragging her stuffed bear across the floor. It was clear that they shared a deep bond. So, how could he make such a grave mistake? Initially, the incident was considered an accident because Christopher claimed that little Parker had only been in the car for 45 minutes. According to research, this shouldn't be harmful, especially since the air conditioning was on for 30 of those minutes. However, when evidence later revealed that Parker had been in the car for over 3 hours, the police charged Christopher with second-degree murder and child endangerment. These charges were later upgraded. The prosecution had presented the case to a grand jury, requesting for Chris to be charged with first-degree murder and child abuse. After going through the evidence against him, which includes a medical examiner's report showing that Parker's cause of death was environmental heat exposure, the text messages between the couple, and the discrepancies in Christopher's statements, the grand jury agreed to indict him. There are 2 ways of getting a first-degree murder charge. There is the premeditated murder charge, where the perpetrator carefully plans out the murder and goes through with it. Then there is the felony first-degree murder, which applies when the murder happens when another crime is being committed. In Christopher's case, the crime is child abuse, in which his daughter unfortunately died. At the initial court appearance on July 12th, Christopher pleaded not guilty to these charges. His attorneys tried to portray the incident as a very unfortunate accident, and his wife pleaded with the judge to release him pending trial. She explained that he wasn't a risk to the community, and they all needed to be together to properly grieve their daughter. I'm just asking if you can allow him to come home to us so that we can all start the grieving process, so he can bury our daughter with us this coming week, and that we can go through this whole process together as a family, Erica said. This was a big mistake and doesn't represent him. I just want the girls to see their father, that I don't have to tell them tonight that they're going to have to endure another loss. Chris didn't have any criminal records except a DUI 15 years ago, so the judge set bail for $25,000 despite the prosecutor's request to set a $1 million bond due to the gravity of his crimes. A case management hearing is set for September 2024, and a pretrial hearing is happening in October. Data shows that about 40 children a year die from heat stroke. 52% of these children were forgotten by their parents or caregivers. 29% were children playing in unattended vehicles, and 18% were those intentionally left in vehicles by adults. And these heat stroke cases recorded in 2024 so far shows that data is accurate. On May 20th, 2024, a 6-year-old girl was left in a hot car for over 2 hours with the windows up. She died as a result of heat stress, as her body temperature recorded was 107.2 degrees. Also in July 2024, just a few days before Parker's death, a 4-year-old child in Texas died after being left unattended in the car. Also in July, 3 days after Parker's death, another child, a 5-year-old boy in Omaha, Nebraska, died after being left in the car for 7 hours. Many people often drive around with their children in the back seat to lull them to sleep, and they find it hard to take them inside to prevent them from waking up. So they come up with means to keep them comfortable in the car. However, leaving them unattended is not an option. In the case of Parker, her father had taken her out to run errands, and upon returning home, found out that she was asleep. He intentionally left her in the car with the hopes of checking on her, but got carried away with his video games, and that unfortunately led to her death. The incident was clearly an accident because the texts from Erica showed that he was very forgetful and had done it several times. If his case goes to trial, his attorneys might successfully spin the case in his favor and help him get lesser charges. But some other texts between him and his wife might make things a lot more difficult. These texts show that he has a history of alcoholism and drunk driving, and since he already has a DUI, it might be harder to portray him as a person incapable of child abuse. Although his attorneys might try to paint a picture where he is battling addiction and some other demons, that won't necessarily get him off the hook, especially since he was found playing video games, and he has been warned on numerous occasions to stop leaving the children in the car. This is not the first time children have died due to the guardians being distracted by video games. In 2010, a Korean couple neglected their real baby while taking care of an online baby in a video game. In Korea, at the time, there were several of these games. where you'd take care of a fairy-like baby till it grows and bonds with the player's avatar, like a normal child would. These Korean parents preferred the less exhausting hassle of taking care of their online baby to taking care of their real baby. In the end, their 3-month-old died after 10 hours of neglect. For this couple, the judge sentenced the father to a year in prison, and the mother's sentence was suspended. Christopher might not be as lucky because the laws in each country differ. However, looking at several similar cases from the past, the severity of charges depends on the prosecutors in charge and the evidence available. For instance, in April 2004, a Long Island mother, Yesenia Brito, was charged with criminally negligent homicide and was sentenced to a year in jail after she left her daughter in a parking lot at her workplace. According to the police, her charges were severe because she had initially lied about the child's whereabouts, which made her seem guilty. Remember that Christopher also lied about how long his daughter was in the car for. But for a case that happened in 2017, where the mother forgot to drop off her daughter at daycare and found her dead hours later, the prosecutor decided not to press charges. This is because he had seen a security footage where he saw how horrified she was to find her child in the car. According to him, she had genuinely forgotten. Christopher was equally hysterical when he found Parker in the act, but he could as well have been putting up an act just like Justin Ross Harris, a father in Marietta who had stopped at Chick-fil-A for breakfast with his 22-month-old son, Cooper. He had driven to work after breakfast and left the boy in the hot parking lot for 7 hours. The child died. Justin had also been hysterical when he found the child, but evidence showed that he might have wanted the child out of his life. Investigation showed that Mr. Harris had exchanged lewd text messages with 6 women, including a minor that morning, and his son's presence might hinder him from carrying out his sexual conquests. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. We'll watch closely as Christopher Scholtes' case unfolds. Do you think his case would be taken to trial? And if yes, what do you think his sentence would be? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe.